Good morning, good morning. It's November. Did you guys notice? It's like past halfway through November, which means I blinked somewhere in June and landed here. Anybody feel that way sometimes? Oh my goodness. People started asking me last week, what are you doing for your holidays? I'm like, oh, I should probably decide that, shouldn't I? And here we are, the week of Thanksgiving. Now, for some of us, we are having the most exciting week planning for Thanksgiving and heading into all of the winter holidays with our families and friends and loved ones. And for some of us, there might be a little niggle somewhere in the back of the mind or heart. And for some of us, there might be full-on existential dread of that which comes, either because of the people with whom we will be celebrating or because of the people with whom we will not be celebrating, or my favorite, the people we become when we celebrate with those people. I am willing to acknowledge it might just be me that turns into a bratty 13-year-old when in the presence of my siblings and parents, and all of a sudden I find myself doing and acting in ways that I haven't thought was appropriate since I was, 13. If you can relate to that which I speak, congratulations, you're normal. You're completely normal. And we can set ourselves up to have the most positive holiday season yet. So Reverend Karen just came off a 2-week series of talking us through how to get ourselves energetically and emotionally kind of cleaned out from the stresses that have uniquely appeared this particular holiday season. And interestingly, next holiday season, it will be all unique things, and gosh darn it, don't we just react the same way? We turn back into those 13-year-olds. But what if I were to say that you are the key to having a better holiday experience on the inside of your own life and out there with everyone else? See, Ernest Holmes, the founder of this teaching, wrote this wonderful essay called How to Start a Spiritual Chain Reaction, to get yourself in a place where you can be the love and then let that ricochet out all around you and watch it spread. And I think that that is a beautiful idea to take into our family holiday excursions. What do you think? Are we in? Beautiful. So we like to check in, this year our theme is Every Path Leads Home, and we like to check in on the spiritual paths that we might be working on in any given message. And so in this particular one, I am honing in on communion, now that's communion with spirit, on self-acceptance, take a deep breath, I know that's the hard one, and forgiveness, which truly at the heart of it is getting out of the old story and moving into the possibility of something fresh. So, starting a spiritual chain reaction. I think it's important that we first talk about what a chain reaction is, and I'm going to ask the scientists in the room to be really gentle with me on this, because I'm going to give an extremely simplified example of what a chain reaction is. It's a sequence of reactions where a reactive product, we're the reactive products, guys. Anybody out there are reactive products sometimes? Ooh, I can be. I sure can be. A sequence of reactions where a reactive product or byproduct causes additional reactions to take place, leading to a self-amplifying chain of events. Ooh, take a breath. So we all know what this looks like on the negative, right? We're in line in Starbucks. It's a long line. We're all in a hurry. We only have so much time to get our shopping done. It's too hot in the store and we're crabby, right? And everyone around us is ordering 72 drinks with like the big carriers, and I just want my iced mochaccino. And then somebody bumps into me. Oh. And I say, watch it. And then they back up and they bump into the person behind them and they go, hey! And the next thing you know, everybody's crabby and grumpy and pushing and shoving, right? Just me. Got it. You guys are so good. Sometimes I wonder who's going to need to listen to my talks because you guys are so developed. But just in case there's one of you out there, I'll continue. So a thing happens, there's a reaction, it causes another thing to react, and that person bumps into two people, and now the whole store is frustrated. And it will likely keep going all day as those people are now crabby, and they go in their car to their next place, and they're crabby with the sales lady at Ulta because they don't, what do you mean you don't have my waterproof black smudgeable eyeliner? I checked on the website, it says it was here. And then that sales gal is frustrated, and it goes on, creating a chain reaction of frustration. I think that that is literally the definition of Black Friday shopping. But Ernest Holmes said this: there's no reason to doubt that in the field of spiritual consciousness, a chain reaction could be created that would bless the whole world. I'm going to read it again because literally my whole talk hangs on this premise. There is no reason to doubt that in the field of spiritual consciousness, a chain reaction could be created that would bless the whole world. Ooh, you mean rather than turning around and snapping at someone, I could say something kind and that could ricochet out through the whole world? How might I do that? How might I step into that consciousness? Well, you know, this guy Ernest that we like to talk about here sometimes, he very conveniently left a formula. I love a formula. He talked about, do you ever notice the contagion of a happy person? How people are just drawn into their energy. And then they seem to emerge happier, and it moves on from person to person to person, and suddenly the energy of the whole room is different, right? We've all had that experience. We've probably even been the happy person in that experience and known, ooh, I really shifted the energy of that space. So how do we get to that place of that happiness? He said that we needed 3 things to really contain and embody the happiness that's required to set off a spiritual chain reaction of good. He said we need to know our oneness with God, that God is always right where we are, that we need to know good is the final power in the universe, and that we need to know love is an all-conquering force. And if we embody all 3 of those ideas, we cannot help but be a spiritual chain reaction starter, a catalyst. So that's what we're going to play with today. We're going to play with these 3 ways to become so happy on the inside of ourselves that we can't help but make the world a better place. So the first one is oneness. Now, we spend our whole lives, and if one believes in reincarnation, multiple lives, trying to understand the sense of oneness. So let's break it down into its simplest pieces so we can absorb it. The first step of understanding oneness is that spirit is right with you now. So I invite you to just feel into that. Spirit is with me now. It is in me. It is through me, meaning everything I do and everything I say, and it is as me. I am how spirit shows up right here, right now. So this is something, I invite you back into the space consciously. This is something that we talk about, if not every Sunday, almost every Sunday. It's a fundamental piece of our belief that this thing that we call God, the divine, universal presence, divine intelligence, that connective energy of all life, that it is showing up as every single being everywhere, which means we have to own it as ourselves first. Which means we can think within ourselves, spirit within me, show me what to say, where to be, how to act. Let it rise up from the inside of me naturally so that I am always an ambassador of the good as I walk around. If we can accept that spirit is showing up in us as us, then it becomes much easier to look around and start to remember, oh yeah, I'm one in the one, and everyone is one in the one. That spirit is showing up as every single individual. Everyone in my shopping center, everyone in my spiritual center, everyone in my family, each is spirit personified individually. Even when, this is key, friends, even when I can't see it right now, even when their behavior might indicate to me that something else is happening, because another part of oneness is everything is made of the divine because there's nothing else to be made of. There is no force fighting against the good. There's simply the good for us to accept at the level we can embody it. So if someone is showing up in a way that is not to our preference, it doesn't mean that something bad is happening. It means they need something good to remind them of who they are. Now, do we need to use these words with people out in the world? No. No. Does it matter if they know what our fancy science of mind phrases mean? Not a whit. Not a whit. What matters is, does the way they feel when I engage with them call them back to a place in their heart where they choose to be kinder, more centered? Now, here's a tough one. Does it matter if we see the change? No. Because changes aren't always instantaneous, are they? It's not always you say something and they go, oh, you're right. You're right. Sometimes it is. I had a really funny thing happen to me once. A lot of you know that before I did this job, I was the creative director for a chain of bead and jewelry fabrication stores here in Arizona. And I often would take the shifts that people didn't want because I can. And so one morning I was opening by myself, everybody's favorite thing to do, right? And a gal comes in and, ooh, steam coming out her ears. You know the cartoons where they're steaming, you hear the woo, woo. She was woo, woo, let me tell you. She was so mad, and I, to this day, cannot remember what she was mad about, but we had done her wrong. We had done her wrong, and she was suffering. And she wanted me to know that it was my personal fault. I had harmed her. She'd never met me, but it was still my personal fault. And she had, shall we say, colorful language. She had gone beyond PG-13 language. I don't think she was quite to X-rated, but you know, it might have taken a committee to decide if it was R-rated or X-rated language. And she was just, I mean, it was a thing. And I had a choice. There are a number of ways I could have shown up in that moment. I could have just let her have at me and been a victim and gotten just absolutely pummeled and then cried for the rest of the day. I've had that day. It wasn't a great day. I could have come right back at her. I don't know if you know this, but I too have a vocabulary. I try not to use it here in this role, but I know some words. And then we both would have been mad and exploding. And then, you know what? Then her story that it was my fault would have actually had some merit, right? Instead, what I did was, I hear you. I really hear you. But I can't work with people who are swearing at me. And she screamed at me, I am not swearing at you. And I said, oh, but you are. You said this and you said this. And so let's just take a breath. And she stopped, and when she heard her words echoed back to her, she was startled, and she was like, oh my gosh, you're right. Oh my gosh, you're right. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I was ready to be told no, and I got myself so amped up in the car to get what I needed, and by the end of the time, she'd gotten her thing fixed, and she'd gotten a coupon for the next thing, and we were laughing, and the next day, she brought me an iced mochaccino. Gonna get that, but it sure is nice to every so often get the aha, you did it right from the divine that shows up as something like that. But what we know from ourselves is sometimes 2 years later, while defrosting our turkey, we think about that time we really kind of yelled at that lady at the bead store, and she said the nice thing, and we just were like, shut up and give me my coupon. And, oh, I could have handled that better. Anybody ever had that happen? Where Many years later, it lands and you think, I would do that differently today. That's a win too. That's a win too. We don't believe there's time in the divine. Time is a human construct. It's made for our brains to be able to understand things. Divinity doesn't need that. And so the up-leveling that happens, it doesn't matter when. We just know we plant the seed and trust that the chain reaction will take light eventually. You can light a match and lay it near a box of matches and trust eventually it'll light the tablecloth and it'll work its way eventually to that box of matches and light them on fire. Wouldn't recommend it, but you can trust. The laws of the universe work the same every time. When we remember that spirit is right where we are and spirit is right where they are, then it's easy to remember that we're all one in the one. We're all one in the one. And it's so much easier to remember to treat someone as a beloved child of the divine when we keep that fresh in our mind. So step one is get clear on oneness. Meditate on it, pray on it, watch talks about it. Good job. You get an A, so you're already watching a talk about it, so good work. Get yourself loved up and prayed up and meditated up on oneness before you head into any potentially challenging situation, which is, life. So do that daily. The second thing we want to keep fresh is the truth that good is the final power in the universe. Good. Emma Curtis Hopkins says, "My God is my good and my good is my God." That goodness is the final power of the universe. And to use the law of cause and effect, the law of attraction, whatever you like to call the law of the creativity of the universe, to make that good visible for us. Now, Reverend Leslie, I hear you asking, why would using the law of cause and effect to bring good into my life affect how the kindness ripples out from me in the world? And it is because of this. All my, I don't like to deal with manifestation because it's manipulative friends in the room, you know who you are, right? Manifestation is a faith builder. I'll say it again. I'll even do the walkie thing. Manifestation is a faith builder. It reminds us, it takes us from here into here about the truth of the good. When we claim good and it shows up for us, we all go, oh, it works, it's real. And that energy is what we carry with us to anchor those spiritual truths. When life gets hard, if we are filled with the wonder and delight of the good of the universe, and somebody says, no, the universe is terrible, we take that about as seriously as when somebody says, no, these chairs are orange. I don't see anyone irate that I suggested these chairs are orange. Or that this carpet that I'm standing on is green. Why are we not irate? Because we know it's not true. There's no emotional skin in the game when we know what is true and what is not true. There's no sense getting upset. If somebody said to me, Reverend Leslie, you are a very calm and quiet person, I might think that their perception is interesting, but I'm not going to be like, how dare you say that about me? How dare you judge me that way? It's just not true. So I can't get upset about it. When we have the proof on the inside of ourselves that good is the final power in the universe, it is so easy to then seek it out. When we are healed, when we are locked in to the truth of our nature, it is so easy to seek the evidence of the good in others. And when they cannot be evidence of that good in the moment, to think, oh, she's going through it. That must be hard. Yeah, I can tell by her behavior in this moment, she's in a tender spot. So I'm going to hold her in that place of love instead of, can you believe what that lady did? Can you believe what that guy said to me? When we can remember all the times we, as spiritual beings, have walked into that space where we forgot for a moment, and hold them in the tenderness that we would like to be held in that moment. Then it's easier to see the truth about them. Right through whatever is happening. And invite them into our consciousness of good. Invite them right into it. So there is this thing that has been demonstrated infinite times, where one is so calm and so loving that without saying or doing anything, that the people around them start to shift. Does anybody know someone like that? In my mind, Ron Trunnell, if anybody knows Ron Trunnell, who's a practitioner here and a ministerial student, just being in his presence, something in me goes, ah. And many of us have met someone like that. When we're inviting people into our consciousness of good, we're choosing to take that role. Now, for my people out there who need evidence, I love you. I love giving evidence. I bring a common one, but one that I think we can all relate to. And that is Mahatma Gandhi. So I have a picture of Mahatma, which was an honorarium, that's a title, like Christ Jesus, Mahatma Gandhi. And he was a gentleman who, he was in kind of middle management as a lawyer, as a barrister. And he got sent from his home in India to South Africa to be in middle management in South Africa because the Brits were running, well, back then, kind of everything. And he didn't like the way that the Indian expatriates were being treated in South Africa because this is during apartheid. So they weren't allowed to sit on the train where they wanted to, or have the jobs they wanted to, or go to the restaurants they wanted to, a story that we're familiar with through many nations' histories. And despite being a very passive guy, despite being very shy, he organized the Indian citizens in his town in South Africa to protest for better treatment, but he insisted that it be nonviolent. He brought in this concept that's part of his particular branch of Hinduism that's called darshan. And that is where many, many people join in spiritual consciousness, in a peaceful, quiet spiritual consciousness to create change. And they were successful. They were so successful that when he went back to India, the governor of the province in South Africa that he'd been working under said, oh, thank God he's gone, because he had such trouble fighting against a foe who he respected so much for these policies. So Gandhi goes back to India and then he retires. No. He decided to lead whomever would join him in darshan in India for freedom from British rule, for freedom of religion, for freedom of movement. And so this picture that we're looking at is a trip that he took all around India, where all he did was go on a train from stop to stop, and at each stop he would get out and sit quietly. He didn't give speeches, he didn't rile people up, he just sat, knowing the possibility of peace and freedom. And then a half an hour later, they would go to the next stop, and more than 1 million people came out to sit with him, calling forth darshan, demonstrating the power of peace in a chain reaction for good so profound, we are still talking about it today, even though this photo was taken in 1947. They put him in jail multiple times. They separated him from his children and his wife multiple times. People died. holding Darshan. They killed them right as they sat. But still they sat until the chain reaction rippled out so far that the whole world rose up and said, this cannot be. And India gained self-rule. Never, never let yourself be convinced that you are an insignificant part of any process. The third step we must conquer is remembering that love is an all-conquering force. Love is an all-conquering force. But Reverend Leslie, I can't stand there being loved when someone is screaming in my face. Can't you? But Reverend Leslie, that would be ridiculous. It might even be unsafe. Is it? Is it more unsafe than living in a world where love is not seen as the all-conquering force? As we head to our homes of our families or our families of choice, or to our quiet dinner alone, which can sometimes contain the biggest foe, an unoccupied mind, we're invited to remember that love sees through all conditions to the spiritual truth behind it, the spiritual truth that God is right where they are. We are all one. It is all good. It is all love. And we are the place where God shows up. We are the ones that say yes. Love chooses to be the catalyst. Love chooses to strike the match of good. And so in closing, I invite you to join me with closed eyes or softened gazes in an affirmation right from this same essay. It says, I know nothing but good can go from me, and nothing but good can return. It is my inward desire that everything I touch, every person I think of shall be blessed and helped. It is my affirmative prayer, which I completely accept, that even as I pass people in the street, some silent influence of good shall reach from me to them. And as we bring our awareness once again into the sanctuary, this is the invitation, this holiday season and evermore, to choose to be the catalyst of a spiritual chain reaction of good and love that spreads so far and wide that we feel the energy of the planet change. Are you with me? And so it is. Let us anchor this in prayer. How good it is. How good it is to simply breathe into the knowingness that there is this all-pervading, all-knowing, all-powerful energy of good that is present literally everywhere, in, through, and as me, in, through, and as everyone within the sound of my voice, and every voice that ever will be heard, that each beloved is an individualization, a unique expression of this God goodness. How good it is to remember that each beloved, every single one, has the power, the capacity, the opportunity to look right into the heart of every beloved and to know the divine truth, to express that loving goodness, to call every soul into the highest expression of their good for their life, knowing that all good solves the whole, all love heals the whole, that everyone is love incarnate. And so too I know that this thing that we call the divine is operating in, through, and as each one of us now as the answer to every seeming problem, as the healing of every seeming ailment, of the solution that is elegant and beautiful and serves all beings. It is so profoundly good. I'm so grateful to know this truth for and with each one of us. As we claim it together, we say, and so it is.